In the heart of the 80s metal explosion, a legion of bands brought thunderous riffs, groundbreaking albums, and cult anthems, only to vanish under the weight of label politics, bad timing, or sheer bad luck. These are 15 underrated metal bands from the 80s you forgot existed, and it's time they roared back into your memory. Let's kick things off with a band that wore silver masks and took progressive metal into uncharted territory. Number 1, Crimson Glory. Masked, melodic, and light years ahead of their time, Crimson Glory were progressive metal's hidden visionaries. Formed in Florida in the early 80s, the band stood out immediately with their silver face masks, theatrical image, and soaring operatic vocals from frontman Midnight. Their 1986 self-titled debut, and especially 1988's Transcendence, blended the technicality of Queensryche with the mysticism of Fate's Warning, but with their own cosmic flair. Tracks like Lonely and Dark Places and Burning Bridges weren't just heavy, they were cinematic. The band balanced intricate guitar work with haunting atmosphere, creating a sound that felt both powerful and poetic. Despite critical acclaim, they were too weird for the mainstream and too polished for the underground. But ask any prog metal fan and they'll tell you, Crimson Glory should have been huge. Number 2, Savatage. Theatrical, emotional, and fiercely original, Savatage brought storytelling into metal like no one else. Hailing from Florida, they started as a raw power metal band with albums like Power of the Night and Hall of the Mountain King, full of pounding riffs, neoclassical solos, and John Oliva's gravel-soaked vocals.
Please believe me when I tell you it's true.
But by 1989's Gutter Ballet, they had evolved into something deeper, blending piano, orchestration, and concept album ambition without losing their edge. Tracks like When the Crowds Are Gone and Ghost in the Ruins hit as hard emotionally as they did sonically, theatrical without ever being cheesy. Praised by critics and worshipped by die-hard fans, but never cracked the mainstream. Still, they laid the groundwork for what would later become the massively successful Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Number 3, Leatherwolf. Call it ambition, or just pure metal excess, but Leatherwolf dared to do what few others tried. 3 lead guitarists, all locked in tight. Formed in California, they carved a sound that blended power metal weight with melodic flair. Their 1987 self-titled album hit like a hammer, sharp, polished, and full of tracks like The Calling and Gypsies and Thieves that demanded repeat listens. But despite the musicianship, they were too heavy for glam and too slick for thrash, and slipped between the cracks. Today, their records feel like the blueprint for what modern power metal would later become. Number 4, Kick-Axe. Canada's contribution to 80s metal wasn't all Rush and Anvil. Kick-Axe brought melody, muscle, and massive potential. Formed in Saskatchewan, the band's 1984 debut, Vices, delivered arena-sized choruses and riff-driven heaviness, especially on tracks like Heavy Metal Shuffle and On the Road to Rock. toured with Judas Priest and Whitesnake, proving they could hold their own, but inconsistent promotion and lineup shuffles held them back just as they were gaining traction. Their sound was big, their timing wasn't. Kickaxe could have ruled arenas. Instead, they became a cult favorite in Canada's heavy metal archives. Number 5, Warlord. While the metal world chased louder and faster, Warlord built something more sacred: heavy metal as myth. Formed in Los Angeles in 1980, they stood apart with atmospheric arrangements, fantasy themes, and an almost spiritual intensity. Their 1983 release Deliver Us played like a medieval epic, with tracks like Child of the Damned and Lucifer's Hammer echoing through tape-traded circles around the globe. They rarely played live or followed trends, but for fans of epic metal, Warlord wasn't just a band. They were a prophecy whispered in distortion and shadow. We've already uncovered 5 names from the underground, bands that carved their legacy just beneath the surface. Which one brought back memories, or did you just discover a new favorite to add to your rotation? Drop it in the comments, and trust me, we're only getting started. Number 6, Warlock. Before she became the queen of metal, Doro Pesch fronted Warlock, a German heavy metal powerhouse that never got the global recognition it deserved. Their 1987 album Triumph and Agony was a near masterpiece of European metal, blending haunting melodies with razor-sharp riffs on tracks like All We Are and East Meets West. Doro's voice carried both grit and grace, a commanding presence in a genre still dominated by men. They had the songs, the image, and the fire, but record label issues and lineup changes stopped their rise short. Still, Triumph and Agony remains one of the most essential and underrated albums in 80s metal history. Number 7, Killer Dwarfs. They didn't take themselves too seriously, but their music was no joke. Their 1986 breakout Stand Tall delivered radio-ready hooks without selling out, with standout tracks like Keep the Spirit Alive and Stand Tall, balancing fun with firepower. They toured relentlessly and built a cult following, but in a decade full of image-first marketing, the Dwarfs never got the push they deserved. Still, their blend of brains, hooks, and grit holds up, and they're proof that being underrated doesn't mean being forgettable. Number 8, Witchfinder General. Before doom metal had a name, these guys were already dragging the riffs through the graveyard. Formed in England in the early 80s, Witchfinder General took Sabbath's slow, heavy blueprint and steeped it in occult imagery and raw atmosphere. Their 1982 debut Death Penalty was murky, lo-fi, and chilling, especially on tracks like Burning a Sinner and Free Country. They were ignored by critics and banned from some stores due to their provocative album art, but their influence lived on in doom, stoner, and occult rock scenes for decades. For early doom fans, Witchfinder General is essential listening. Number 9, Sanctuary. They brought precision and power to the late 80s metal scene, and left behind two of the most underrated records of the era. Formed in Seattle, they combined speed, technical riffs, and operatic vocals to create a sound both brutal and melodic. Their debut, Refuge Denied, was produced by Dave Mustaine and packed with sharp, high-energy tracks like Battle Angels and Termination Force. Their follow-up album, Into the Mirror Black, leaned into darker themes and more complex songwriting, a bold evolution that showed just how far the band could have gone. Number 10, Satan. One of the most technically gifted bands to emerge from Britain's early metal underground, and one of the most criminally overlooked. Formed in Newcastle in 1979, Satan combined the melodic sensibility of Maiden with the speed and precision that would predate thrash. Their 1983 debut, Court in the Act, featured future Blitzkrieg vocalist Brian Ross, and tracks like Trial by Fire and Blades of Steel, a masterclass in sharp, intricate riffing. Despite a groundbreaking sound, the band changed names multiple times, becoming Blind Fury, then Pariah, which fractured their momentum and buried their legacy. But in underground circles, Court in the Act remains a must-hear classic. 10 bands in, and the vault just keeps getting deeper. Which one surprised you the most so far? Or maybe you've got a rare vinyl or old t-shirt from one of these forgotten legends? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear which names you think deserve way more recognition. All right, let's dive into the final 5. Number 11, Mercyful Fate. Few bands in the 80s pushed boundaries like Mercyful Fate, musically, lyrically, or visually. Formed in Denmark in 1981, they fused twin guitar harmonies with dark, theatrical storytelling rooted in the occult. Fronted by King Diamond's falsetto wails and corpse-painted intensity, their albums Melissa and Don't Break the Oath were drenched in atmosphere and lyrical blasphemy, years before black metal would borrow the look and feel. Banned in several countries and avoided by mainstream press, the band still managed to influence everyone from Metallica to Slayer, and helped redefine what heavy could mean in metal. Number 12, King Diamond. After Mercyful Fate, King Diamond didn't tone things down. He doubled down. Launching his solo career in 1985, he brought a full theatrical vision to metal, elaborate stage sets, concept albums with full horror storylines, and vocals that jumped from growls to ghostly falsetto. His 1987 album Abigail is still considered one of the greatest metal concept records ever, with tracks like The Family Ghost and Arrival blending eerie storytelling with razor-sharp musicianship. Critics often overlooked him, but fans knew better. This was horror metal done with total conviction. Number 13, Racer X. Fast, flashy, and way ahead of the curve, Racer X was the Shredder's band. Formed in Los Angeles and fronted by guitar prodigy Paul Gilbert, they released Street Lethal in 1986, a clinic in speed, precision, and twin guitar fireworks. Songs like Into the Night and YRO weren't built for radio. They were built to melt faces in rehearsal rooms and guitar magazines.
Into the night.
Despite jaw-dropping talent, the band stayed underground, too technical for mainstream metal, but essential for guitar nerds everywhere. Number 14, Exciter. Before thrash broke out, Exciter was already pushing the speed limit. Formed in Ottawa in 1978, they were one of the first bands to be labeled speed metal, with their 1983 debut Heavy Metal Maniac laying the groundwork for what would follow. Tracks like Stand Up and Fight and Violence and Force were loud, fast, and unapologetically raw, delivered with punk energy and metal intensity. They never got the spotlight like Metallica or Slayer, but their influence is undeniable in the DNA of North American thrash. Number 15, Xentrix. While the US and Germany dominated the thrash scene, Xentrix quietly gave the UK a worthy contender. Formed in the late 80s in Lancashire, their 1989 debut, Shattered Existence, delivered tight riffs, sharp solos, and just enough melody to set them apart. Songs like Crimes and Balance of Power showed serious potential, and their infamous cover of the Ghostbusters theme, though a marketing misstep, brought them short-lived notoriety. They had the sound, but arrived late to a crowded scene and never got the recognition they earned. That's 15 underrated metal bands from the 80s, each one left out of the spotlight, but never lacking in power, passion, or precision. How many of these did you already know? And which ones are you heading off to check out right now? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to go even deeper down the metal rabbit hole, don't miss my other video, 30 obscure 80s metal bands you need to hear. It's packed with even more hidden gems and forgotten legends. The link's on screen.